Hi, everybody. We're going to give it a couple minutes and let some people jump on. Happy that you're joining us on this beautiful Wednesday, or at least it's beautiful on my side of the country for now. Waiting on a little residual Ian to flow up into Georgia. Hope everybody's safe. Hope anybody in Florida is safe. Sending prayers down there. Let's see what we got. All right, give it a couple seconds here. Hard to believe we're almost in October, y'all. We're getting close. Summer flew by. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know Andrea has a wonderful presentation for you today. First of all, welcome to the 2022 Harmony webinar series. My name is Christy Weeks, and I am the Brand and Digital Media Manager for Harmony Foundation. And today we're lucky enough to be joined by Andrea Pittman with the Nectar Group. She has been a presenter for us before, and it was fabulous. So I'm so excited to have her back to talk about conquering executive function woes. So many of you have already seen many of these slides, so I'm going to kind of skim through them. Harmony is on a 43-acre campus up in Rocky Mountains, just outside of Estes Park, and we are a residential rehab and offer comprehensive treatment for adults and their families. So with over 50 years of treating addiction, I believe this year is 53, we have fostered a generation of long-term recovery, and we support our clients and their families for a lifetime. So we provide a wonderful family program. And if you want more information on that, you can check out our website because it's all there because we believe that they are a part of this process as well. Our staff at all levels of the organization work together to create a community of recovery support. We have about 70 residential beds. We have a full medical detox, and we have an IOP program. Again, if you're interested in those details, please take a moment to visit our website. It's www.harmonyfoundationinc.com, or you can call our admission staff. They'd be happy to help you. So as we go along, if you haven't been here before, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. A couple of things to remember is that we do record these webinars and they will be posted on our website for access afterwards. At that point, they are no longer eligible for a CEU. We do record these and we keep track of how long you're engaged. So in order to receive a certificate, you need to be involved in the presentation for 45 minutes. And again, I am able to see how much time has gone by. So if you've done that, you'll get your certificate by email by end of day Friday, September 30th. So if you don't see it by the end of day Friday, September 30th, give me a quick shout. There's my email, cweeks@harmonyfoundationinc.com. and I'll be happy to help you out. If for some reason you need to jump off early, but you still want a certificate of attendance, let me know. I can certainly do that as well. So with our presentation today, Andrea will be answering questions along the way. So please feel free to enter any questions or comments in the chat box. I am pretty sure I remembered to disable it or to enable it because it was disabled last week when we started. So if you want, go ahead and chime in. Let me know where you're from. Happy to have you. With all that being said, I am going to roll into our fabulous presenter. This is Andrea Pittman. She is the executive director, again, of the Nectar Group. And she is, let me see, my box just popped up here and see if I can't get somebody, make sure everybody's working here. So she is the founder of the Nectar Group, and she has over 18 years of experience working with children, adults, and families through cognitive skills training, consulting, teaching, and she's received her education and teaching certification from Southwestern University. She has consulted with over 80 learning programs across the U.S. to help improve client outcomes. With a rich background in education and neuroscience, she has always striven to pinpoint the root issues of learning challenges and create comprehensive plans of action to help clients achieve excellent results. She is particularly interested in integrative approaches to improve brain health and function and general well-being. She enjoys cooking, the arts, reading, listening to podcasts, being outdoors, and playing with her two cats, Paddington Bear and Sterling Fox. Love the names. Very awesome, very creative. So that's our presenter for the day. I also want to make sure we reach out and see if I can't get my next slide to go. There we go. And thank the Nectar Group specifically for their continued partnership. As I've said before, we've worked with the Nectar Group in the past, and they are fabulous. So if you need any more information or have any questions, please check out their website, and we will make sure that Andrea's contact information is available to you either at the end of this or in the email I send out with your certificate. So with all of that being said, I am going to go ahead and turn it right over to Andrea, and we can get going.
Thanks so much, Christy. Let me just get my screen shared here. Is that where you guys can see it okay?
We can.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
On the very first screen here, there is a little link. If you go to yourbrainonlybetter.com/presentation or / whatever slash that is, presentations. My slides are on there for download, as well as a really helpful handout that I'm going to reference today that has like an executive function screener and some of the things that we'll talk about. So make sure to go to that. There's multiple presentations that I've done just in the last few weeks, so you'll see some different ones, but you'll see the one that says Conquering Executive Function Woes. And if you like to have a copy of the slides and the handout I'm going to reference, then you can grab it there. So I'm going to start out and just share with you briefly about 1 minute who the Nectar Group is and who we work with, so you understand a little bit more about where I'm coming from, and then we'll dig into the heart of it. So we're an education company that's really focused and dedicated to helping students overcome learning challenges. And when I say students, that's clients of all ages. We'll talk about the range that we work with, but we want to help people obviously reach their full potential. We have an assessment-driven process where we use scientific tools to evaluate and pinpoint the root causes of learning challenges. And then we create custom solutions utilizing cognitive neuroscience to resolve those root issues. So we take a holistic approach to improving school, work, and life performance through a few different elements. One is that we provide therapeutic interventions that are, again, grounded in neuroscience to treat the causes of learning difficulties for people of all ages. We also offer K through 12 and collegiate level through graduate school level academic tutoring in reading, writing, math to build solid content and prepare students, whether that's someone who just graduated high school heading into their college career, or it's an adult in their 40s returning to school. We do study skills and executive function coaching to ensure successful outcomes, whether that's in the classroom or in the workplace and in life. And we also provide one-to-one educational consulting services, individualized schooling. We have Nectar Academy, which is a one-to-one school for children who are maybe in a transition from mental health or addiction services and are not ready to be back in a full classroom, or even kids that need just a year of therapeutic interventions and need to maintain their schooling. And we also work with a lot of homeschool families as well to provide support there. We work with clients starting as young as 6 years old, and my oldest client right now is 74. So we work with really the full lifespan. We work with people with all types of diagnoses, from ADHD, dyslexia, autism spectrum, people from the recovery community. We work with a lot of adults who have damaged their function, their mental, their brain function essentially from substance abuse, people that are gifted, twice exceptional, people with traumatic brain injury. So really anything that could cause the brain not to function optimally. We also work with people looking for a competitive edge or college prep, as I mentioned. And we provide all of our services nationally and internationally. I think our furthest away client from where I'm at in Denver, Colorado, is currently in Indonesia. So we work with people wherever they're at because we offer all of our services through telehealth. So wherever you are, we can be as long as you have internet. So today we're going to be talking about one of the probably like top areas of questions that I get about executive function and how to really help people with poor executive function skills. So we're going to talk about what is executive function, what does that mean, what skills are under that kind of umbrella, and then we're going to talk about 2 approaches to supporting. Whether that's yourself or clients that you work with to help support the development of those executive function skills. both compensatory measures and ways to accommodate and compensate for low executive function, but also to me, the most exciting and most important part, which is how do we actually treat executive function deficits so that they can be overcome. So what is executive functioning? There's a lot of words on this slide. We hear this term a lot, but executive functions can be really thought of as a set of processes that are all to do with managing oneself or one's resources in order to achieve a goal. That goal might be just getting through your day and being at all your appointments on time and showing up present and in the moment. It could be a bigger picture goal that you're trying to achieve, like a degree program or a certification or something. So can you manage all the processes involved in that? It's an umbrella term for the neurologically based skills involving mental control and self-regulation. We think of these executive functions as kind of the command and control function of our brain. Sometimes they're described as like the CEO of the brain or the conductor of all of our cognition. They help you manage life tasks of all types. So for example, they let you organize a trip or a vacation, complete a research project. If you're a kid in school, it help you plot out and plan a paper for school on time so you're not staying up all night the night before writing it, those kinds of things. We often think about poor executive functioning as being disorganization, but organization is only one of the important skills that fall under this umbrella. We have other things that are executive function skills like resisting temptations or resisting acting impulsively, the ability to filter out distractions and focus on what's the most important. How you hold and manipulate information mentally. Like if I gave you a multiple step process, can you remember steps 3 and 4 while you're doing steps 1 and 2? And do you have an ability to flex and adapt to your environment, especially when there's unexpected changes? One of my favorite ways to think of executive function is as air traffic control. So it's being able to focus, hold, and work with information in the mind, filter distractions, and switch gears. It's kind of like having that air traffic control system at a busy airport to manage. I love this comic, just you're clear to do whatever. If you've ever, we all have days where we have poor executive function, right? We're stressed or we're tired, we're overworked and things just, we tend to feel like we're falling apart at the seams. And it's like all the planes are coming in simultaneously and no one's managing that tower. And so that's what we can think about. Again, we all have momentary lapses or days that we're off, but people with executive function kind of disorders, it's like this all the time. So we can just even start to imagine how much this can affect us day to day. So there are 12 skills that are the core skills that make up executive functioning, and I have them listed here on this slide. We're going to go through them in detail and talk about how we accommodate or compensate and work with limitations in these areas, and also how we treat them. So I'm not going to go into depth of these right now, but hopefully you're getting a good look there and picture of what are those 12 skills, from things like response inhibition to task initiation, getting started, especially on those things you don't want to do, to do you have good metacognition? Can you think about your thinking and self-analyze where you might be tripping yourself off or self-sabotaging even. So executive functioning skills make it possible to mentally play with ideas, to take time to think before acting, to meet novel and unanticipated challenges day to day. Again, to kind of resist temptations or impulses that we know are not in our best interest. It helps us to stay focused and complete tasks fully. Sometimes we get in those situations where you have a lot of loose ends and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to tie off some of these things because nothing's getting done. That can be it. And it overrides autopilot. So we all have like our natural default way of being, but when we have good executive functioning skills, we can think about our thinking and make choices. A lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy is about doing this, is overriding the autopilot physiological kind of natural default system and taking charge of it, to override it, to make our own path that we want versus just feeling like we're being taken along for the ride. So we know that executive function skills, just as by defining them, it's easy to see how important they are. As I already mentioned, lapses in executive functioning are very common. The frequency and seriousness of the lapses can reflect kind of individual strengths and weaknesses in executive function, and where it tips from being like normal lapses to problematic. We know that it's essential for mental and physical health, for success in work, school, and life, and for cognitive, social, and psychological development. Super important. An interesting fact, since I work with so many school-age families with school-age children as well, is we know that executive function skills are a better indicator of school readiness than even IQ, and that individuals with executive function deficits are more likely to need extra help or repeat grades. These, those skills, some other ways that we see them help students in particular, if you work with, again, pediatric population or people who are adults, this applies to the workplace as well as to like collegiate level work or certifications, remembering and following multiple step instructions, persisting at problem solving, managing long-term assignments. There's several others listed here on this slide that are so important. We use this diagram. If you've attended any of my webinars or workshops before, it may look familiar to you because I talk about it a lot, but we call this the potential pyramid because we find for people to really reach their full potential, both academically and in the workplace, they need all three tiers of this working well. And at the foundational level are our cognitive skills. There are 7 core cognitive skills. You'll see 6 listed on the slide, and that's because we break out, the reason I say 7 is we break memory into both short-term and long-term. But you can kind of think of your cognitive skills as like your computer processor. They're the skills that are always running in the background, allowing you to take in information, attend to it, store it in your long-term memory, retrieve it later, process all different types of input, and they're foundational for learning and functioning. Tier 2 is our content. This is more like our knowledge or our database of information. If you're a kid in school, this is going to be things like reading, writing, math, science, history. It's the subject matter. As you move into your professional stage of your life, into your career, this is going to be job-specific knowledge. So if it's an accountant, it's understanding, accrual versus cash basis accounting, or if you're an attorney, it's the knowledge bank of legal, terminology and the penal code and those kinds of things. Tier 3 is our behaviors, and we could probably list 100 behaviors here, from grit and work ethic, self-confidence. Are we organized? Can we time manage, prioritize? The executive functions primarily live here. However, they're built on a strong foundation of cognitive function. So we know that the primary cause of executive function deficits are underdeveloped cognitive skills or weaknesses and holes in that foundation. It's like building, putting the roof on a house where there's no foundation or where there's a weak foundation. It's going to impact. And so we know all of these things relate together and are important elements to being able to be at someone's full potential. So you may ask, how do strong executive function skills really develop? And one of the things that makes treatment of executive function deficits so difficult is that it develops over time. And so if someone has not been having executive function kind of optimal environment for executive function skills to develop from birth, from early childhood, we work with parents on how to start building executive function skills for toddlers, because it's through experience and hands-on and how you interact. So we know that relationships develop executive function skills. If at a childhood level, caregivers support children's efforts and reward them for trying hard or recognize them for that. They model skills, engage in skill building activities, provide just a consistent, reliable presence. We know for adults that you might be working with that have low executive function skills, there's a strong correlation between children who did not have engaged caretakers or parents, whether that was because the parent was absorbed in their own addiction or mental health issues, or they were just absent in the family, or the child had something more significant like abuse or neglect. They're not getting that constant, reliable presence. Back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if the bottom is not being developed, the top skills are not going to be able to be even kind of considered. helping them be guided from dependence to independence, and protecting them from things like chaos or violence, adversity, not in a way of not letting them ever work through their own difficulties, which we'll talk about here in a second, but that they are safe and able to explore development of these skills. Activities are important as well, in addition to the relationships, just being exposed to an increasing complexity of skills where it's building one thing upon the next, and even teaching and developing a strong foundation for stress reduction, things like exercise, mindfulness, breathing exercises, incorporating that. We start those exercises with kids at 6 years old that we work with to start to build that. That's talking about children, of course, but what you have to think about is when you are working with an adult client that is having executive function deficits, often these things were absent. And so even if they should have, in theory, happened when they were younger, a lot of times we have to go back and build these foundational skills first for them to develop those executive functioning skills to the optimum level they should have as adults. The places that they're at, environments, having space for creativity and exploration, and even having economic and social stability really allows us to do that, right? Again, back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then development, we want to see cognitive skill development supported for all 7 of the core cognitive skills, since that's, again, the foundation. Academic learning is prioritized, or job place learning. It's hard to have good executive function skills if you don't understand your responsibilities, or you have deficits in your skills for the actual job you're expected to do. Being modeled and taught these for children directly and explicitly at home and at school. And then in adults, going back and reteaching these skills explicitly. Having accountability for working on your own, as well as having independence is encouraged to start to graduate people from needing a support system to being able to be independent with these skills over time. So that's kind of our process of how they develop. Now, people always ask me, what impairs the development of executive functioning skills? And I've already addressed some of those to our slide we just looked at. But there are 4 primary causes for weaknesses in executive function. So the number 1 cause are deficits in cognitive skills. So we see this, the cause for the weaknesses in the cognitive function, the number 1 is genetic. You can have a genetic predisposition to being, underdeveloped in any of your cognitive skills. So there's less neurons that have fired and wired together in the white matter tract for, say, your processing speed or your short-term memory. And that's there from birth. Also, we see due to external injury. Now, external injury could be a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. It could also be a brain injury due to substance abuse. It could be from extreme emotional trauma or abuse or abandonment or something like that. But it will cause those on that tier 1 of the pyramid we looked at, those cognitive skills to not be as intact or optimally functioning as they should. That's the number 1 cause. We also see another cause is poor content knowledge or academic gaps. So for example, think of a student in school, if they have a significant deficit in their reading, and so all their effort and energy is going to just try to read, the executive function skills don't develop the way they should because all the energy is going there in mental focus. Lack of relationships and unstable home environments or trauma, that's some of that external injury tied up in number 1, but we know that those issues are significant enough to be their own category. And then lack of opportunity to develop independence and problem-solving skills. So this one I want to take a note on, because whether you're working with children or teens and adolescents, or you're working and young adults, or you're working with family systems or parents, this is a biggie right now, where we see just in kind of our current days parenting styles in general, that there is a lot of times kids are not being given the opportunity to really develop that independence and problem solving. So I'm going to talk about that here in just a second, but I'll let Christy let me know. It sounds like someone has it, or looks like someone has it.
We had one of our viewers make a comment that she had heard that long COVID can affect executive function challenges as well. Any experience there?
Yeah, great question. And it's too early to have anything concrete, like there's no scientific studies yet, but this is becoming a very common question I'm getting from mental health professionals as I do a lot of trainings. in that we are seeing reported. So we know that long COVID has neurological effects, and we know that cognitive function is neurological. And so we're seeing very similar to traumatic brain injury effects of long COVID. How long is that going to last? Is it permanent? Is it going to fade with time as hopefully symptoms decrease? Is it that because there's an actual cognitive deficit, or is it because there's just like inflammation in the brain can cause your cognitive skills to not function optimally? We just don't know yet. I've been really interested to just in an informal way. We have some clients that we have test data for their function prior to having long COVID, and now they have long COVID. And so several of them are starting to come in and be retested. So we can see if there's actually measurable changes, or if it's more perceived or experienced and felt symptoms due to just like inflammation and fatigue and those kinds of things that are maybe more transient, or at least we hope they're going to be transient. So great comment, and something that's to be determined. There's just not enough time that's elapsed. I feel like, long COVID has only been really recognized in just recent, we're talking about months to a year at this point versus, something that we've had long haul to really look at that. Great question. Under that external injury, we also see that again could be a traumatic brain injury, but it could also be like just like seizure disorders that damage brain function, or even like we have people that we work with that have had chemotherapy, and it's called it's referred to as chemo brain, where you have fogginess of thought and struggle with executive function skills post certain types of medical treatments that may be life-saving and were important, but have these some residual side effects. So it would not be surprising if we see that same thing with something that's having a neurological impact like COVID. So one of the things when you're working with parents is to talk with them about resisting snowplow parenting. So there's been a significant increase in teens of executive function deficits. And we think some of this, not to like point fingers and say, oh, it's all the parents' fault, right? When you're a parent, you have plenty of guilt and things that you worry about. But snowplow parenting, if you're not familiar with that, that is like, you can see on this picture on the left is like creating a really sheltered childhood, unhealthy dependency on the parents. And the parents basically go in front of the child, removing obstacles, covering everything for them so that they clear a nice pathway. You can see this picture on the right that I love of the parents just removing everything while the kid walks behind. It's not really a winter wonderland. It definitely creates that inability for the young adult to have the self-confidence or to have developed over the years those skills. And so it's something that I think is worth mentioning as we work with different families and people in different stages. Now, one of the things I'm going to reference to you at the beginning, I shared with you that if you go to yourbrainonlybetter.com/presentations, you can download the slides, but there's a handout. And in that handout, there is an executive skills and executive function skills questionnaire. And this is a great tool to use for yourself or for clients or patients that you're working with. And it's a really nice little self-assessment, or even that someone could do like for their child, or for, you could have, we've had multiple times adults will have like a spouse or coworker, even depending on the dynamic and the relationship and the comfort level, fill this out and how they perceive it. And it will really help you narrow in on what are the root issues for you. And so that way, where you can focus and what you need to focus on in terms of treatment. Now, we also do testing through like psychoeducational or neuropsych testing that we do through the Nectar Group. With people, we can test in 41 states. So most everywhere where you're at, we can test through telehealth testing even. So if someone needs testing, we can do more extensive testing to diagnose executive function issues and really get deep on that. But that's a great screener and way to get started on where do you need to help with. So we talked about what is executive functioning and why is it important? We're going to spend the rest of our time talking about recommendations for how you can grow executive function skills. How can you grow in this area so you can graduate beyond and do, like our title said, overcoming executive function woes. So the first question that is typically asked at this stage is, can executive function weaknesses actually be improved or even cured? Can you fix it? And so we think of executive function weaknesses on a spectrum from mild to severe. And so the goal of effective treatment is to move a person to the less severe end of the spectrum. So if we have severe executive function problems over here and we have none over here, our goal is to move you to that. And for people who are basically at, what I typically see is for people who are at moderate, mild, moderate, mild, moderate, or mild, we can move them off the spectrum where they have enough growth that they wouldn't really, like if we did diagnostic testing, they really wouldn't test positive anymore for having this. Now, it's not as black and white as that, but as you can think of that for all intents and purposes. What we see most often with people who have more severe limitations or more moderate severe is they may move from severe or moderate severe to mild or mild moderate, just depending on where they're at on that spectrum. The good news is that is full of hope for people. We see that they will no longer meet diagnostic criteria. That's like what we see with ADHD, for example, as well. There's really two approaches to how we do this. And one is compensation through accommodation or modification. So this is not what I consider treatment. It doesn't correct the underlying issue, but it gives you better skills and tools to manage this and to live your life successfully with it. With this weakness. I mean, we all have this, right? We all have our weaknesses that we hopefully learn and develop skills to accommodate for those and to work around. For example, if you know you have a weaker memory, you might be really good at writing down appointments in a planner, and that helps you accommodate for that. So you're not just constantly missing appointments because you forget it. We also look at actually treatment or intervention of the root causes of the executive function. So we'll talk about both of these. So the difference between compensatory measures and treatment, just to flesh that out a little bit further, because I think it's so important, is that compensatory measures focus on coping with the disability and symptom management, versus intervention focuses on overcoming the disability by treating the root cause. So for example, again, back to like someone with a poor memory, a compensatory measure could be using a planner and putting everything down, setting alerts and reminders on a phone, those kinds of things. That hasn't fixed that you have a poor memory, but it's given you a way to cope with that and to manage the symptoms. Intervention or treatment would be that we actually treat your memory deficit so that you no longer have a memory deficit. And a lot of times the most effective thing is to do both of these things. Now, we're going to talk about the compensatory measures first, and I'm going to actually walk you through the 12 different cognitive skill, or not cognitive, the 12 different executive function skills that we showed on that slide right at the beginning, and talk about how do you compensate for that. What will be helpful is if you pair what I'm going to go over in these slides with that executive function screen that's in the handout you can download, because that will have where you can see what categories are your biggest weaknesses, and maybe pick 1 to 3 of those to focus on, whether that's with you or with a client. So the first one we'll look at is response inhibition. And at a super simple definition, this is the capacity to think before you act. Ways that you can help yourself if you have poor or a client has poor response inhibition is to lessen multitasking. The more we multitask, the harder this is. That's true with actually most of these. So lessen multitasking. Turning off notifications on a computer or a phone, because what happens for some people, if you have weak response inhibition, even if you have pretty good, every time you get that chime or that alert, you're breaking your focus on the task at hand and jumping to it. And if you have poor impulse control, you're going to automatically go to that versus being able to go, I can ignore that for right now. Providing a quiet study or workspace, whether this is a kid in school or an adult trying to get their work done in the office or in a home office, having that designated quiet space away from others. Having a clear and clean desk. What we know is that the more clutter that's around you, the more your attention and your impulses are going to typically go to those other places. We know that even having one of these, your cell phone, in the same room with you, even if it's shut off, impacts your ability to have better impulse control and stay dialed in and focused. And so we recommend putting the phone in a completely separate room if someone struggles with this. There's actually fascinating studies of people getting literally like getting brain scans while having the phone within the same room versus out of the phone, and how the brain changes based on that. Also setting up do not disturb times so that you don't have to worry about managing yourself to not deal with those interactions, or I should say interruptions, but really being able to set up times where it's off limits to do that. Our next area is emotional control. This is the ability to manage emotions in order to achieve goals or complete tasks, and control and direct our behavior. So a way to compensate for this is to reduce or eliminate emotional triggers. Now, obviously, we can't go about life, the rest of the world doesn't probably care that much about our emotional triggers, right? But you can be, when you're developing this skill, we can try to reduce that load and not put ourselves in circumstances that are going to potentially make this much more difficult for us, while we build up the skills to be able to handle those more challenging circumstances. Explore and rehearse healthy coping mechanisms. Recognize those triggering situations and early signs of that your emotional control is going to get derailed, so that you can help with coping. Knowing like, okay, I have this circumstance coming up, I have to be around this person, or I have to be in this environment. And that's something that doesn't go very well. I'm going to have this meeting with my boss, and I know that I don't do really well with even constructive criticism. And so how can I prepare for that? And even back to the prior one, rehearse some healthy coping mechanisms for what am I going to do internally to keep control of my emotions in a healthy way. And just taking breaks. When you have, especially when you know you're in a situation where you're going to have to be stretched for self-regulation in this way, giving yourself some breaks to walk away, get a breath, go outside for 5 minutes, those kinds of things can be helpful. Sustained attention is the ability to maintain attention despite distraction. So this sustained, we also can call, there's a sub part of this called selective attention. So it's the duration you can pay attention for, and can you manage those distractions? So you can do this by reducing distractions, wearing noise canceling headphones, not playing music with words in the background. Music with words creates your brain having to be split with attention in two places. Modify or limiting the task length and demand. So using a timer to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this for this specific amount of time, and then I can take a break. So really using that. I don't know if many of you use this. I use Insight Timer for the app for meditation. I use it also for what we call at the Nectar Group a focus timer. It will give you the little nice chime, and you can set the time for any length. You can put music on in the background that doesn't have words, that can help some people focus as kind of like a white noise technique, and utilize that. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to stay dialed in until this goes off. We have some clients that we start out, their sustained attention is literally 1 minute. And so our goal initially is, can we go 2 minutes? Can we go 3 minutes, and start to build that muscle in a sense. Giving yourself variety and choice helps with sustained attention as well. And then exploring optimum work times and environments. So for clients, sometimes, especially as in this modern day where so many people have the flexibility to maybe set their hours, or to work from home, playing around with like, do you get more done from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. or are you more of it, then you can do that block, even if maybe the rest of the people at your job start at 9 or 10 o'clock, or are you a night owl and there's certain things you can hold at that time where you're able to work more optimally there. Organization, we know what organization is, right? The ability to create and maintain systems to keep track of information or materials. This is decluttering rooms and computers, even working on like making sure all the files go into a folder versus having a desktop covered in documents. Having a structure to the environment, utilizing tools, of course, whether that's planners or to-do list or outlines. I will tell you the research is pretty interesting in that people who struggle with executive function skills do significantly better with paper planners than digital. And I think, the paper planner allows you to flip and see like multi-days, You can, reference back and forth the active handwriting. So I'm not anti-technology. My whole company is run on digital planners, but the research and how we work with our clients is 100%. You want to utilize that paper-based system that will work for them. And then just making sure to build in things like taking time at the end of each day to organize and set up for the next day. I don't struggle with executive function issues, but I know even when I build that in, my day starts so much better and go much better. Flexibility is obviously what it sounds like. The ability to transition between things and kind of roll with the punches, so to speak. Taking breaks throughout the day helps with this as well. But planning ahead, especially for the unexpected, thinking about if something unexpected happens. You obviously can't plan for the specifics of something unexpected, but you can plan what your response is going to be. Also, if you struggle with flexibility, slowly increase exposure to new and novel situations. I have a client, and what she's actually doing is having her significant other do like, hey, we were planning on going to the grocery store, but we're changing plans and we're going out to eat, or we're changing plans and we're going to run this other errand first. And that would send her into a panic attack. And so because it wasn't what was planned, and that ability to transition created a lot of anxiety. So slowly doing those small changes, and she, we roped in her partner to be able to help her do that. Goal-directed persistence is probably one of my favorite executive function skills, because I see that the rewards of improving this are just tremendous. I'm an integrative health and wellness coach as well, and I just see that with this is one of those things that just moves the needle in so many ways. So it's the ability to have a goal, follow through to the completion of the goal, and not be put off by or distracted by competing interests. And so we all have competing interests, right? Like you may have a really good goal to exercise, but you also might have a good goal to like spend time with your family or to get a good night's sleep. And sometimes there's just not enough hours in the day. And so you have competing priorities. So how do you manage that? And we do that through setting SMART goals. So if you're not familiar, most of you probably are, but if you're not familiar with the SMART goal acronym, it's setting goals that are specific, meaningful, adaptive, realistic, and time framed. So being very, not just saying like, I want to be more calm. It would be when I'm faced with interactions with my mother-in-law, which is a trigger for me, I am going to remain calm and by doing X, Y, and Z, being very specific, and I'm going to do that over X amount of time. Breaking goals into smaller, more manageable steps, and then establishing like what are the rewards of those goals and how are you going to celebrate that growth to really reinforce to yourself those action steps that you're taking and how it's helping you get to that goal and having the persistence to carry it through. And our programs, every client and every program is working on their goal setting as well. Working memory. This is the ability to hold information in memory while performing complex tasks. I always say, think of in your brain, you've got a file cabinet where you store everything. And when you work on a file, you don't work on it in the filing cabinet. You go get it out of the cabinet and you bring it to your desk and you work on it in that temporary space and when you're done, you go and you put it back. So your working memory is a sense that workspace, that table that you're bringing the file to. And so it's how well can you hold on to that? What we find is that you can help your working memory by offloading, not having to do all of the steps yourself. So this would be like utilizing checklists. So if you have a 5-step process, you don't try to remember the 5 steps, you have a checklist and you just walk through it. This can be a game changer in organizations for just like systems and processes, is having everything checklisted. At the Nectar Group, every task we do is checklisted. And if there's not a checklist, we stop and make one if we create something new or have a new process, because it just offloads some of this. Writing down instructions so that they're documented, and or you can also obviously audio record directions or lectures. We find that for people that are in the workplace that are struggling with this, or students in school, like recording lectures or staff meetings where they're going to know you're going to get a lot of information. If you're weak in your working memory, that can be really helpful to record it so you can go back to it later. using a flow chart to break down something into steps, and even color coding. We work with people to create a color code of like, what do I have to do? What should I do? And what would I like to do? And really like, with a 3-color highlighter system so that you can put things in priority and know how to, kind of hold that in that space. With that color code helps with that too. Task initiation is the ability to begin projects without undue procrastination. I laugh because we all have these moments, right? In an efficient or timely fashion. So this can be utilizing cues and prompts, like putting those reminders, scheduling time to do things, ripping the Band-Aid off, just saying, okay, I'm just going to do it. This is painful, but how do I just rip the Band-Aid off? Setting a time that you're going to do non-preferred tasks, and making plans to help prioritize your time, setting rewards for doing the things you especially don't like to do. It doesn't have to be some big thing that you get. It can be, if I get this done, then I get to do this. One of our directors at the Nectar Group is moving, and she's like, I can't watch the Bronco game unless I packed X number of boxes. So it was her, making that reward and incentive for herself. I talk about this a lot with having just non-negotiables, especially for things that you don't like to do. So I don't love exercising. I know lots of people get like a runner's high or get a lot of endorphins or feel energized. I like the way I feel from exercise, but I don't like the act of exercise very well. But exercise for me in certain blocks is just non-negotiable. So I know it's something that I'm doing no matter what, and it's not up for negotiation. And just that mental thing, that mental mindset keeps me from having like the internal negotiation of like, oh, maybe I'll go later, or I'll just do double this weekend, or those kinds of things that end up getting you off task. So this can be really helpful for people who struggle with task initiation, again, especially in those things that you don't like to do. You don't usually struggle with this for things you do like to do. Planning and organizations, the ability to create a roadmap to reach a goal or to complete a task. So this can be like, again, using color-coded system for files, projects, or activities, using like a weekly family or if it's in the household, or a team, if it's at work, chart to identify important events or daily activities, using the electronic organizers, mobile devices, email reminders, text alerts, where you get the push notifications, whatever. Writing a cheat sheet of high priority activities and projects, and just, again, being organized, organizing rooms, desks, offices, all of those things make a big difference. Time management is obviously the capacity to estimate how much time one has, how to allocate it, and how to stay within the limits and deadlines. This is making and scheduling time limits, utilizing all those tools like we've talked about, from apps, planners, alarms, and practice estimating how long it takes to do something. So it's really interesting. If you look at people who struggle with time management, you'll ask them, having them ask someone else to bounce it off, like, here's what I have to do. How much time do I need? This was my weakness, and I realized I always underestimated. I'm extremely optimistic, so I think I always underestimated. And so I have a coworker who's really good at time management, and I would always say, okay, so here's this project. I think this can be done in 2.5 hours. He's like, that's 7 hours of work. I'm like, no, it's like 2.5, 3 max. No, it's 7 hours. So like scaling it against someone who's good at this can be a really good tool. And now I've gotten really good at that, and actually like, oh, sometimes we get projects done early because I've actually overestimated, which is always the less stressful place to be. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. It's standing back and taking a bird's eye view of oneself in a situation. This is where you can have discussions with trusted friends, family, or counselors, or even journal about behaviors and then go back and look at them. Asking, like, the formula I always recommend is ask, what's the problem? What's my plan? And then, am I following the plan? And how did I do? So having those check-in points with either someone external or internally doing that and self-managing. Tolerating stress is a lot of self-care, right? So the ability to thrive in stressful situations and to cope with uncertainty, change in performance. So this can be having emotional check-ins, looking for models of this, and engaging really in self-care, whether that's exercise, meditation, time with family. So that was a lot, I know, in those 12 different executive functions. Hopefully there's some good compensatory measures that you can help with, or that can help you or help your clients with. The big exciting piece, I think, is actually treatment through intervention, in terms of how do we overcome some of these limitations. And the way we're able to overcome some of the limitations is through neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity, that ability for the brain to change, right? It's that the brain is plastic, it's malleable and moldable. And even if I do not have wired in the neural pathways to be good at executive functioning, those can be built. I can get the neurons to fire and wire together and build new neural pathways that will allow me to be successful with this. There's a law in neuroscience called Hebb's law, and it simply says neurons that fire together wire together. And we get neurons to fire together through mental exercises or activities that focus on the part of the brain we're wanting to develop. There's a man named Dr. Michael Merzenich. He is the creator of the cochlear ear implant. He owns a company called Brain HQ and Posit Science in Southern California. And he says, your brain, every brain, is a work in progress. It is plastic. From the day we're born to the day we die, it continuously revises and remodels, improving or slowly declining of a function as a function of how we use it. So this is the hope for all of us, is that we are not stuck with what we're born with, and we're not stuck with the limitations that may have been created due to things that were out of our control, or even if it's some self-damage, the things that were in our control. The brain is amazing in its ability to do this. So when we look at this from a treatment perspective, our first step is to test to pinpoint the root cause of the issue. What is the root cause of the executive function? Is it that I have a weak working memory, a weak processing speed? I have poor logic and reasoning. One of my cognitive skills are not working well. Is it because I have some unresolved trauma? What is the actual root cause? Once we get to the bottom of the root cause, then we either move forward with what we call functional interventions or emotional interventions. And functional interventions, there's 3 primary areas, and emotional, there's a couple here. We know that the causes of learning and executive function difficulties are primarily cognitive weaknesses. National Institute of Health research actually shows that 80% of the time it's caused by one or more deficits in cognitive weaknesses. So this is the most common treatment that we focus on at the Nectar Group in particular, is skills, or is training, I should say, that targets the cognitive skills. Sorry, my mouse is going crazy here. There it is. So cognitive training is where someone works one-to-one with someone called a certified cognitive coach to target the cognitive deficit. They do mental exercises, just like I could target my bicep and do bicep curls or push-ups. And if I do those frequently enough, I'm going to have a bigger, stronger bicep. The brain is really no different. There are exercises for processing speed and for logic and for short-term memory and long-term memory. And back to that neurons that fire together, wire together. When we do those exercises frequently enough, where my arm builds muscle tissue, my brain builds white matter. It stimulates the neurons to fire and wire together and lay down a stronger, more robust, more effective pathway. So this is a corrective measure, and this is how we move someone on that spectrum from the more severe end to the less severe, or off the spectrum altogether. We also can do actual direct study skills or executive function coaching. On your slide are some of the elements that we recommend are always included with someone who's getting one-to-one coaching, things like time management, organization, responsibility, self-advocacy, whether that's like for someone in school, like note-taking, which helps in the workplace as well, or test-taking strategies, etc. We also know that psychological interventions can be helpful, from counseling, of whether that's talk therapy, play therapy, art therapy, to learn and practice strategies to really mitigate those executive function weaknesses, and to help with coping because of the emotional impacts that some of these executive function deficits can have. I mean, I've had clients I've sent to counseling because while they're working on their executive function skills, they get fired from their job because they're struggling with it. And there's really hard and significant consequences to this. We also offer integrative health and wellness coaching, where at the Nectar Group, we don't offer counseling at the Nectar Group, but we do integrative health and wellness coaching. There's other people that do that as well, which can really help on setting goals, that goal-directed persistence, analyzing values and motivators, and help you learn how to build accountability and a partnership with someone. We also find that neurofeedback can be highly effective in helping people with executive function deficits, in terms of having more emotional control and control of attention span and focus and impulsivity. It's not the perfect therapy for every person with executive function weaknesses, but we look through testing to determine, should they have cognitive training? Should they have psychotherapy? Should they have neurofeedback? Should they have some combination? We do not offer neurofeedback at the Nectar Group, but can help people get plugged in into a great provider who can really help in this category. So as I mentioned, at the Nectar Group, we do offer psychoeducational neuropsychological testing to help diagnose that. There's other places that do that as well. So you can certainly have a client get testing to pinpoint that. We also will do a pared down, if you don't need a full neuropsych, just a cognitive assessment to really pinpoint their strengths and weaknesses and help them determine what type of intervention is most helpful. And then cognitive skills training, tutoring, executive function and study skills, family or individual integrative health and wellness coaching. We always offer, if you're thinking of a client who you think could benefit from this, we always offer free consultations with me or one of our other senior director, his name is Danny, where we can review outside testing they may have already had or just go over their case and help them determine what's the right fit. Is it something with us or is it an external referral that's needed with that? So you can feel free if you have any questions at all about any of the stuff we covered. I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. I'm happy to answer them. If you just have a client or yourself that you have questions about, you can always feel free to reach out. We're happy to do a complimentary, like I said, consultation to go over that. Don't forget to download the handout so that you have those resources and the screener that you can utilize. And again, I'll just look forward to hearing if you have any follow-up questions I can address at all.
That is amazing. Thank you, Andrea. That was amazing. I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, please.
One of them was as far as financing, do you take insurance, Medicaid, Medicare?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Great question. It's not a black and white answer. So let me give you the basis of it, but you can always call and follow up if you have a specific case or person that you want me to go over. So we are an out-of-network provider. So we don't take any insurances as an in-network provider. That said, our service is pretty unique. There's only 7 clinics that do the therapy that we do in an outpatient setting in the entire US and Canada. And because of that, it makes most clients fall under where they can get approved for what's called a gap exception with their health insurance, which means that the insurance company has to cover their services with us at the in-network rate, even though we're an out-of-network provider. Because there isn't anyone they can see for this type of therapy. There are plenty of places that do executive function coaching, don't get me wrong on that, but I'm talking about the cognitive intervention. Also, all of our services are under the direction of a neuropsychologist and clinical psychologist, so it is coded medically. So we will help the family or the individual, tap into any benefits that they have and work with them through that process of securing the gap exception. At least 60% of our clients get some level of insurance coverage for the service. So
that's good to know. That's good to know. In the same sense, I did have somebody ask, and I'm looking because we've had so many thank yous and comments. Does an individual become a certified cognitive coach?
Yeah, so there's a pretty extensive training that we put people through to be a cognitive coach. So what we do is they go through, it's about 200 hours of classroom training, and then there's like a kind of like your practical application where you work with clients while being supervised as a by a supervisor who's doing it with you. And so clients are able to sign up for sessions at no cost to be able to do that. If you have more questions about that, I'm happy to talk to you.
Okay.
It's not like a DORA regulated like licensure or anything like that. So it can vary and there's different places out there. that do different types of certifications around this. Like I was certified through Berkeley Neuroscience Department. A lot of times it's through a neuroscience degree. We offer a certification that like all of our staff go through as part of their employment with us, but we can, I can always help you with that if you have more, because it kind of depends on your
Resources.
background and what other degree you have and what you're looking to do with it. Yeah.
Perfect. Andrea, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I have to tell you, I'm in school right now. I graduate in December. So
Nice.
trying to juggle the full-time school schedule and full-time work and family and everything, executive function becomes quite impaired
Wow.
on certain days. So
Yeah.
much appreciated. Everybody, I want to really quickly let you know our next webinar happens on October 26th. It is a presentation by Deborah J. It takes a family cooperative approach to lasting sobriety. We'd love for you to join us. Andrea, love to have you come back again, as always, because you provide such amazing information and there were so many thank yous there.
Wonderful.
Certificates will be emailed out by the end of day on Friday. Please, 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 please check your junk emails first, because I tend to go there first for most people. So, but if you struggle and can't find your certificate by that time, please let me know. I'm happy to help you. And I wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful rest of their week and month. And I will see you all in October.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.